Welcome to the new interview series for the YouTube channel, which I'm calling Writer Real Talk or something like that. I don't know, it's a working title for the moment, in which I interview writers and other originating artists about their experiences in creating musical theater. So each interview will likely have a theme or a topic that we discuss along the way, but really, I don't know, we're building this plane as we fly it. As my coaches, Susan Blackwell and Laura Camion, like to say, it's all an experiment. So, here we are. But without further ado, let me introduce our first guest here today. Aaron and I met 9 years ago, question mark? Bartending at Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, which was an experience. That was very much an experience. But we became fast friends because Aaron is one of the most delightful humans on the planet, and we nerded out about all sorts of things, including musical theater writing and also vocal things, especially listening to that show. There's a lot of craziness in that show, if anyone recalls. And we just had a lot of fun. We got along so well, and we've maintained our relationship over the years and became actually even closer during the pandemic. And he is one of my dearest friends. So everyone, please welcome Aaron Michael Krueger. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here and for being the first. You are a brave soul. A very brave soul. Trusting me. Potentially foolish. But first and foremost, for the audience, could you tell us a little bit about who you are? Maybe how you identify as an artist, what you do in your life and career, and maybe even toss in what work of yours people may have seen or heard at some point.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Aaron Michael Krueger. I compose, I write lyrics, I write librettos, whatever it is that I kind of need to do in the moment. I write a lot. And was a dancer for a while, was a performer for a hot second. Um, and yeah, I've written some shows that have been in festivals around the city. I have a musical called New Dawn that's been in like 3 different festivals and won some awards, as well as like a musical called Super that I was a superhero musical and won an award in Fringe for here in New York.
And there's another one out there, right? That people may have seen.
So there's a show called Grudgical that I wrote with my roommate, Peach Mealy. That is a horror parody musical of the classic film The Grudge and the Ju-on series, if you're familiar with Japanese horror.
Love it so much. So you do a lot of different things, wear a lot of different hats. That's a pretty broad experience too, and across several like festival and other opportunities in the city, which must be a unique experience. You've done so many of them.
Yeah, and I can say they are all very different, and even doing the same festival, very different experiences.
Yeah, I know that's not today's topic that we
No.
decided on, but we may have to come back around and talk about it because
Yeah.
I love it. Cool. Well, thank you and welcome. And also, I'm excited to chat with you specifically today because the two of us love to talk. Boy, do we love to talk. How many hours have we stayed on Zoom chatting for?
I don't know. I lost count.
I mean, early in the pandemic, it was like till what, 4 a.m. we might be chatting.
Easily, yeah.
But time meant nothing. So
Time meant nothing, never would again.
Anyway, we have survived this far, so good for us.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the topic, though, I've got some general questions for you, just so we can get to know you a little bit better. All right, you ready?
Sure.
How many are there? There are 6. Here we go.
Okay.
What musical theater writer's work do you gravitate toward the most? They do not necessarily have to be your favorite, but is there a writer out there whose work you constantly find yourself listening to or wanting to hear more?
Ooh, I feel like the easy one that anyone could say is Sondheim. Um, but I guess kind of like a little more off to the side. I will listen to go see anything that Tom Kitt does. Tom Kitt is kind of like the style of music that kind of like speaks to me the most, I would say.
Ooh, interesting. I want to hear more about that. So, Tom Kitt, who's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love the stuff that he does, especially those orchestrations or vocal arrangements for American Idiot. So good, so good.
I'll
But
add the orchestrations too were phenomenal. But
I know less about the
yes,
orchestrations of that show.
yeah,
I've not
both of
really played it at all.
them.
Um, but out of curiosity, why Tom Kitt? There are plenty of people who write in similar styles. What
Mhm.
is it about his sound that makes you want to come back for more?
I, for me at least, so I'm someone who grew up listening to a lot of like pop rock music, and especially like 2000s pop punk is like kind of where my soul sits as a human being. And I really love, as well as like I originally used to want to score films, and so I listened to a lot of like film scores and pop punk music. And I think what Tom Kitt does so brilliantly is marry the two of those things. And so it takes a lot of like pop rock music and just rock feels and is able to like turn them into something that almost feels like it is a movie score in the way that he orchestrates it, things like that. That's it's kind of like a he writes in like a lovely marriage of the two.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it that way, but that's very true. He's phenomenal at taking that style and weaving a big through line story.
Mhm.
Huh, that's really interesting. I'm going to ponder that one. Hmm. All right, here's question number two. You ready?
Yeah.
What have you seen as your biggest challenge thus far in your career? And I know you do a lot of different things career wise, so
Mhm.
it can be in any facet, but is there a challenge that immediately sticks out to you in your mind?
Um, hmm. I mean, this kind of goes into what we were going to talk about today, but it's writing different styles. And like, I find while that is, it's rewarding and fun, but like really having to like sit down and study like style has been like one of the biggest challenges because there are a lot of intricacies in order to like get something sounding and feeling correct, even if you know that it's not correct. Like, and trying to like find those it's like learning a new vocabulary each time you're going through a different time
Yeah.
period or style.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. And to
Mm.
clarify for our audience, is it musically you're talking about, lyrically, both? Is
I,
it libretto as well?
I would say both, absolutely musically and lyrically. It's there's certain vernaculars that you get to use lyrically in some things, and like other things that if you follow like English grammar too closely, it will not fit within the musical style, uh, and you have to literally change the way that you would speak or the way that your characters would speak based on the musical style.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm excited to dive into this. This is gonna be good. It's gonna be good. All right, here's the question.
Yeah.
What have you seen as either your greatest success so far or the thing in your career that you're most proud of so far?
Um, I would honestly, I not that people don't need like awards to legitimize them in this career. Like, absolutely, that is not important. But I will say, um, in Fringe actually, and it's not even like it's super the superhero musical that I wrote, winning outstanding music and lyrics for that show. I think was one of the biggest accomplishments I feel like, and a lot of that just has to do with the fact that we were up against a whole lot of different shows. We got a lot of people who didn't like the show, but a lot of people who really did like the show. We got some not so great reviews um, by some people who had very strong biases, but it was uh, an accomplishment because it was like, oh, okay, so like even if it's something that doesn't speak to everyone clearly, this is something that still does ring true with a lot of people, like speak to a lot of people. So I think it was actually, and I was with you the night that I found out that we won. We were like sitting in a bar, and like it was either you or Natalia who like pulled it up on your phone. It was like, wait, what? Um,
Where were we?
we had been rehearsing for cabaret that Natalia was getting ready to do.
That's right. That's right. Oh, I remember this.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
didn't pull that up. Natalia must have pulled that up.
Yeah. And so that is probably the biggest one, just because it was like I had done so much on that show as well.
Yeah.
I had like ended up directing the show, which I didn't want to have to do, but like
Right.
did, and it was a whole lot of different things like went into that experience that I was just drained and exhausted from, and then something was recognized for it, so that was nice.
Yeah, and I really like the way that you framed it around the idea of it rang with like it resonated with some people, and maybe it didn't resonate with everyone, but the fact that it did, something you put out there, was enjoyed to the core by a group of humans is
Yeah,
pretty damn great.
it's a nice feeling being like, okay, so like someone I created this thing and someone likes it.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be their favorite thing. They just found some sort of artistic merit in it that made them feel.
Not to mention Susan Blackwell again, but my people's favorite thing. You know, it's
Yeah.
true. It's true. As long as it resonates with someone, this is worth putting out there in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, I like it. That was a good answer, my friend. Okay. Number four.
I do not know these questions beforehand.
No, I gave Aaron no heads
No.
up. Future guests will have a slight heads up, but
oh no, I like not having a heads up. I think it's great because I would think about these questions far too much and try to formulate something. So
yeah, I would do the same thing. I'd be like, oh, I must script an answer. We don't need to. Yeah. So here's the fourth question. Of your full pieces, so your full length musicals, or if you've written other things that you consider full length pieces as well, which one's your favorite or gives you personally the most pride?
I would say musical that I wrote Mood On is probably like it's my baby. It's the first one that I wrote. Did a workshop of it in college. The show is basically unrecognizable from them as well. Like as things happen with that, they evolve. You know, you learn as you write. You're like, this is why I don't do these things, and oh, I could do this. That would be so much more powerful. But yeah, I would say that show. A lot of it has to do with the fact that it's just very personal. Without being like my own personal story at all. Because it's not. There are just a lot of aspects of it that are drawn from my personal experiences and down to like there are quotes in the show that are literally like lines that are quotes that people have said in my life around me.
That I did not know.
Oh yeah. No, even some of like the jokes in there are completely unintentional things that people said to me at some point in time in my life, and I was like, oh, marking that one down. I'm going to use that later, and use those things like in the show, which is nice. Also, like it deals with mental health and things like that, which is another thing that I really like to bring to light and start a conversation about.
Yeah, which is very important. I don't think we talk about it enough, especially in this industry.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw on my personal Instagram account today, but I saw a post that someone had put on their story, and I put it on my story as well, talking about a specific type of anxiety disorder that we feel in this theater industry and why.
Mhm.
I think it was geared more toward performers, but I think it definitely affects anyone in this
Mhm.
industry. Just the way that it's built and what we have to do in order to maintain our mental health in a work environment that can sometimes be kind of toxic.
Oh, absolutely, it can be. Um, and yeah, it's an important thing for us to talk about, like not just like globally, but like specifically in the theater community. There's a lot of emphasis. I was actually just having a conversation about that with a friend recently. Is that there's a lot of emphasis on the competition and on the like trying to beat out other people for like a role or for an opportunity or for this and that. And it's like we shouldn't have to be competing. We should be allowed to do this and celebrate each other because there is enough room for everyone to be creating art.
Oh, wait,
Um,
say that again.
there is enough room for everyone to be creating art.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
so we don't need to be competing or like putting other people down for the art they're creating.
Right. Oh my God. Yes. You know, I feel that to my core. I mean, it's
Yeah,
the basis of the thing I'm building. So,
yeah,
there's that.
mhm,
Yeah, man, this whole idea of competition or mine has to be better than yours, or if
mhm.
you have it, then I can, like a zero sum mentality. It's just awful and
Yes.
also not true. Like,
Yeah,
that's not actually the way that the industry works. It's just the way we view it for some reason.
I will say, and this is I'm not naming anything, but I think a lot of it, like we are taught these things too.
That's a good
Um,
point.
is that there are I really wish a lot of theater programs would get away from the competitive nature of things
Yeah.
and really go more towards like the inclusivity and more opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and of course, it is systemic in certain ways as well.
Mhm.
Like, for instance, an actor goes to an audition, right? So many of those people will be called back, and so many of those people, one, will get that role. You know, that is definitely, I mean, it does something to you mentally, knowing that
Mhm.
you're going in for a lot of opportunities, and ultimately, at the end of the day, one person's going to get it. I'm sure it's the same thing for things like festivals, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people apply at these festivals, but
Mhm.
only I don't know how many Fringe had at the time that you were doing Fringe, but there's only X number that make
Yeah.
it in.
Mhm.
So that means someone's keeping gates.
Yeah. And even with that too, like I will say, so I've done a bunch of festivals in the city, but I've not done a lot of festivals as well. Like I think that's worth mentioning. Like I've that is exactly it. Like there are only so many shows that they let into these things often. And so not getting into a festival is nothing about your work. And like I submitted something one year, didn't get in, and then submitted it another year and did. Um, I've submitted a show to one festival the same year, didn't get in, and then to another festival, and it did get into that festival. So like it is that kind of competitiveness is built into the industry, unfortunately.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think that is also an example of, maybe it wasn't right here, but it is right here. Like there is room for opportunities for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And could we use more opportunities? Totally.
Not always, but
And I think uh, people shouldn't also discount what they can bring to the table. Like if an opportunity is not there, creating your own, or and not even necessarily doing that with yourself, but getting a bunch of people and creating your own
oh yeah.
is totally valid.
Hmm.
Totally valid. I know a lot of people look down on things as like vanity projects. I don't think that exists. I don't think there's such a thing as a vanity project.
Yeah.
I think you're just making art, and you were your own impetus for it.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind me plugging someone,
No, not
I
at all.
have a wonderful friend named April, and they have a Twitch channel where they will once a month put up an entire musical. And it is and they create opportunities for like all of their performer friends to like come in, and not even always performers, people who write, people who are just singers, who like necessarily don't act or anything like that, to come in and perform something just for like one night, and it's just fun, and we're just hanging out in their apartment, and things like that are, I wish there was more of that, um, because
Yeah,
it's
because
valid,
it's Twitch, which means that
wonderful.
there's an audience for it, right? People watch
Hmm.
this, they tune in.
Yeah,
Like I've
and
tuned in, so
I
it's
will
cute.
say, yeah, they are so much fun, and in that, like, it's even we do this without rehearsing anything. We like each get like the script ourselves and the score ourselves, and we like spend like the week or two going up into this, learning the show, and like sitting there learning our parts through the entire. I know we did a certain show from Oz, not to I don't know if things will copyright whatever, but um, did a show and like got this score, and we were just singing ensemble parts on so much music because there's so much ensemble music, and it's wonderfully shocking getting in and everyone knowing their parts and just being able to throw things together on the fly as you're singing it, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh, this is so cool, where like
yeah,
everyone just did it.
yeah. I love that. I love that so much. I mean, tangentially related to this, and we'll get back. But
Yeah.
I just did once up at the Bristol Valley Theater. I was the musical
Hmm.
director, and I was also Amen, which was very fun. I had a
Yeah.
blast. But like once is a gigantic show to do in an 8-day rehearsal process and a 3-day tech. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a lot to do. So we had
Mhm.
asked people to come knowing their material, and let me tell you, on day one for that 6-hour music rehearsal, when we started with Falling Slowly and people just knew their parts and they played it and they sang it, I was like, oh, this is this is gold right here. I mean, we weren't doing the song,
Oh,
we were doing Falling
yeah,
Slowly.
yeah.
You
I was,
got
yeah,
me. You got to that before I
yeah,
did. Get out of here. But like it's magic when people know their stuff. And then you get to shape it from there. And I
yeah,
think people, are often stuck in that mindset of, well, if there's not like a full rehearsal process for this thing, I couldn't possibly X, Y, or Z. And I think we can prove in professional settings and non-professional settings that's just not true.
yeah. You can throw something together, and it is equally as valid. It is does not diminish the value of it any, and can honestly oftentimes sound just as good, as like a professional show where you have like a 2 month rehearsal process. It's
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. We I think we took a turn here. Um, not not a bad turn at all. I'm
yeah,
glad to have this conversation.
yeah.
I do just want to briefly come back to that idea of like there's enough for everyone. For those of you who don't know, I am starting an online community. Actually, it's already up and running. It's in testing phase. It will be public very soon, or by the time you're watching this video, I'm not sure which. Called the Musical Theater Writing Collective. It's an online community for musical theater writers because we don't really have one, and so I'm building it, and trying to fill that niche. But the idea is to bring people in so we have a space to gather, to learn, to chat, and to uplift each other. There are things like our every other week lab where people can bring in things they're working on, sign up for a slot, and present for feedback. But we follow a feedback structure that's very much centered on the artists and what they're trying to do, leaving the competition, the ego at the door. So I very much am starting this because of this belief that I think there's enough for everyone, and what we're all bringing to the table is valid. It's not a zero-sum game. To use another cliche, a rising tide lifts all ships. I think that is just so important. So it is near and dear to my heart, that philosophy. So thank you for even mentioning that, Aaron. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. Two more questions. These should
Yeah.
probably be shorter answers, but who's to say? I don't know. You and I can
Do you
talk
mind?
for
Do
years.
you mind if I turn off the fan really quick? Sorry.
No,
I have a fan right
please.
here. It's getting a little chilly.
I'm jealous. over here, we got a fan.
Sorry.
Trying not to get the fan noise in the mic, so it's in a spot that's not
Yeah.
terribly effective.
Hmm.
It's hot, y'all. I love New York, but it's hot. Hot. Okay, here's question number 5. Do you have a favorite song you've written?
Ooh.
I know it's a mean question to ask to a writer. My apologies.
Um,
Or a song moment. It doesn't have to be a full song.
I have a okay. I have like probably like a favorite song moment, and then like a favorite song proper that I don't think are the same thing.
I'll allow it.
Okay, sorry. Um, so there's sorry, just loopholes in the question. So song moment, there's a song that I wrote called "Fly" that's in super. And before it goes into the chorus the final time, um, there's a 2/4 measure
Yeah.
that like just suspends it just long enough where it's like a and then they go in. I like out of the bridge into this like final like 2 times to the chorus, where they're just like screaming. No one's screaming, they're just like healthily mixing. But
Please, healthily
yeah,
mix.
healthy mix. But yeah, no, I think that's like a favorite song moment just because like the build up is nice, and then I also like the like slight suspension of like, okay, I think it's gonna come like take a running leap and then and then like a nice like breath before like it goes into the.
I can attest to this moment, y'all. This is a good moment. I like this
I,
moment a lot.
I just like it because it is like the deep breath that you take before like jumping off a precipice. Like it is that feeling.
Oof.
Um,
Oof.
and then a favorite song. I have a show that I've been working on that's a Hans Christian Andersen show. And there's this duet that happens closer to the end of the show called Stay. I think I'd have to say that is probably my favorite song that I've written.
I don't think I've
And
heard it. Have I?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a nice duet. It's a solo for most of it, but it becomes a duet about 2/3 of the way through. And it's I think it hit at a like writing it hit at an important time in my life, and then like that song has kind of like been there through a couple of very key moments of my life that have really been difficult to kind of get through at times, but it is a song that has definitely helped with that, with the getting through, and kind of like a nice place to like focus those emotions.
Yeah.
It's kind of that song.
Yeah. That's amazing that you can, well, first of all, that you have a song that you've written that has done that work for you. I love that. And I love hearing writers talk about those moments. I don't know that I've experienced that personally, but I've heard many writers talk about it. And that just, yeah, it sounds like an absolute gem of an experience and a piece of art to have.
Yeah, I mean, if you I think that the cool thing is that a lot of people, when they're like in kind of like those very intense emotional moments, whether people realize it or not, I think a lot of people do turn to art and specifically music. Like, think of any time you feel just overwhelmed and you like turn on a song to kind of like process and match what you're feeling, or because I think it's something that like makes us feel understood. Because if you find a song that matches what you're feeling, it's
Yeah.
you're not alone in your feeling. But I think there's something really cool about being able to write that and like write that moment yourself, and then being able to like put it out there into the world, and then being able to have it like well received as well, um, is something that is like, okay, cool. Then my feeling is not like a solitary feeling. It is this feeling that I was feeling when I was going through writing this song, creating this piece of art, is something that is universally felt.
Yeah, the shared experience. and the way that music can connect us like that.
Mhm.
Ooh, that's a good answer, Aaron. It's a very good answer. Hmm. Also, I don't think I've heard that song, and I want to.
Oh, well,
But
it's just on the YouTube and the Instagram.
great.
Yeah,
And I will find
yeah.
it. I'll search that shit out. Oh, I guess I just decided that we're swearing on this interview.
Oh, noted. Okay,
Great.
cool.
Okay. We
Right.
will so when the when the audio is part of the podcast, it will get the little explicit rating on iTunes. Thank you, Apple. That's fun. That actually makes me feel cool. I'm not cool, but it makes me feel cool.
Feel
um,
edgy.
it's so edgy. Awesome. And then last question before we dive into our actual topic at hand.
Yeah.
Is there a show that made a big impression on you as a kid? Whether that's something that you saw, heard, or a part of, something that made an impression on you in a way that may have, I don't know, pulled you toward this career.
Um, as a kid, I think kind of discount some of the, in a good way, we'll discount some of the shows that I would have said specifically. So the way that you framed this, thank you. Um, so I think as a kid, when I was a small child, so not that this isn't important to really anything, but so I was a very sick child when I was like a baby, and my mom like used to sing some musical theater to me. I was in the hospital in like an oxygen tent, and she would sing "Bring Him Home."
Oh my
Um,
god.
and then yeah, I know,
Ouch.
very dramatic. I live a very dramatic existence.
Ugh.
Um, and then my mom would sing like "Not While I'm Around," like to
So
put me
all
to
the
bed.
heartbreaking songs, all the ones that
Yeah,
just, make me want to cry
so
in a corner.
yeah, so which says a lot about me as a human being. But I my mom had an Andrew Lloyd Webber compilation CD growing up. She listened to a lot of Andrew Lloyd Webber and a lot of Barbra Streisand. And I think the first thing that like really um, it terrified me, I knew to run and hide at a young age, was the opening chord of the song Phantom of the Opera. Um, was something that like moved me in a way that I was terrified. Um,
The
and
big booming D minor, right?
the big booming like or pipe organ there, like or
Yes.
pipe organ patch there that they're using it. Yeah, absolutely. Was like this was wonderful and terrifying and like the chromatic down. It and then like kind of as I got older and like stopped being afraid of the sound of that. I'm talking like when I was like 6 years old. I remember like hiding when I heard this. As I got older, I would just sit and listen to it and kind of like grew to really enjoy that sound and like enjoyed the this goes back to kind of like fusion of things, the fusion of like 80s rock with like a pipe organ with like this like very like cathedral sounding thing and like things that like you normally don't put together. I thought was really cool, and I think kind of like fed into my like desire as like a kid I wanted to score films before I knew that people did write musical theater. Um, and I think that song itself is what kind of really fueled that because it was like the power that music had to like incite something so strong in me.
Yeah, I love this. I love this for two big reasons. Number one, I was also kind of obsessed with the Phantom of the Opera opening as a kid.
Yeah.
To the point where like I watched every iteration of Phantom of the Opera, everything that I could get my
Mm-hmm.
hands on as a kid, and I ended up playing that. My poor piano teacher. I ended up playing that opening song. Well, no, the song Phantom of the Opera. I ended up playing that for a piano recital at one point.
Yeah.
Um, Actually also one of my worst piano recitals. That's neither here nor there. So I love it for that reason, but also this idea of you leaning in to those darker things. Like I know you. I know that
Yeah.
you have an enjoyment of the macabre, and
Yeah.
I love that that kind of started that early for you.
Oh yeah. I was terrified of a lot of things as a child, and my older sister did nothing to help that. And then it just kind of became like a way of life, and like, oh, okay, scared, scary. Oh, you can like. There's a lot of other things that are hidden within here that is super cool to explore.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. This is great. This is great.
Yeah,
I mean, do we need a main topic? We could just do this for you. But we should chat
that's
about
a
this
thing.
because I'm very
Yeah.
interested to hear your thoughts. If you didn't hear from before, friends, the main topic for today is writing in styles that are outside of your comfort zone or what you do naturally, question mark. I don't know. We didn't really frame it with specific wording, but I know that both of us have done this, and I'm
Oh yeah.
sure that we both have a lot of thoughts. But I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, because I'm going to preface this all with saying that I personally think that Aaron is phenomenal at this, especially having just had you in the first cohort of the collective course. You so successfully wrote in so many different styles to the point where this was a constant praise point from the class to you. Is just how good you are at like chameleoning, not a word, but it is now,
Yeah.
yourself into these different styles. And I have to agree. And just as a side note, Aaron was in the course as a composer specifically, so we were talking about the music side of things. But I know you've written in some styles. I think you're brilliant at it, but I also know that it's not easy.
First of all, thank you. Like really, thank you. A lot of it, I feel like I am. I think one of the hardest things to deal with in that is just feeling like a fraud, and kind of like battling that feeling of like imposter syndrome that comes about when you're
What?
doing
What
it.
syndrome? Never heard of her. What?
Yeah, right. Um, but thank you. Yeah, no, the class was a whole lot of fun. One of This was not a challenge. You never gave us this, but like doing this like cohort the first time around, every single time I got paired up with someone, it was writing a very different style of song.
Yeah.
Um, and like I think that was a challenge that I placed on myself as well. Was like I need to write something different. I need it to be stylistically different than something else. Because I'm someone who believes that like the music should be informed by the story and not the other way around. Um, I think there are a lot of people who get stuck in this is the way that my writing sounds, and so everything is going to sound like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's comfortable, and which is fair. I think everyone should have a comfort zone that they return to and that they're able to like feel nice about. But I I think writing, we have so many different styles of music, and then on top of that, like I just was saying before, like ways that you can like combine those styles,
Yeah.
um, to create new like fusions of things. I don't know. Yeah, writing in different styles, I find to be a very fun challenge. That I don't think I'm the best at all the time, but
But who
um,
could be the best all the time? Get out of here.
true, true.
That's an
But
impossible standard.
I do strive to be as good as possible about that. I've done everything from like so like I grew up listening to a lot. So obviously some Andrew Lloyd Webber and Barbra Streisand that and Celine Dion was a good one too. Um,
Yes.
and then when I really got to like start picking my own music, I did listen to a lot of movie scores, and
Ooh, okay.
instrumental music. Um, and then I started listening to a lot of like pop punk music as well. Back when it was being released, not when it's like kind of come back into style.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
so like I was listening to like Simple Plan and Good Charlotte and like My Chemical Romance when like those things were coming out.
The good old days.
The good old days. So and then from there it was so like when I started writing music, I was writing music actually for like my concert band and for a marching band. And so I was writing
Mm.
instrumental music, and then that kind of slowly led into like, okay, cool, but I want to try writing this pop rock music as well and like pop punk music. And so then it was sitting down and listening to how do you find the things that like are in common between the two of them.
Yeah.
I think like Switchfoot's On Fire was my like lead-in point.
Okay.
If we're familiar with Switchfoot or On Fire, it's a beautiful song. It's wonderful. I can't remember what year it came out, but was a very nice because it's it starts off with this really cool piano lick at the beginning, and it's this beautiful ballad that this like punk band did. Um, and then like also from there, Simple Plans Untitled was another one that then it was like, okay, cool. So this is how you take these concert band like orchestral sounds and apply them to pop rock music. And so it's like the back and forth between there. Um, and then I went to school for music and theater, and the program that I went to was very much centered on classical music. And so it was studying music that way, and then when you learn how to break down music that way, you then can like sit there and do that to all types of music and figure out what makes certain things tick. Like you dissect it, you figure out like, oh, Amy's music has this kind of beat underneath it. We use this kind of like timbre for things. Like my instrumentation should be sitting here as opposed to here, and um, yeah, I think at first when doing it, you start off kind of almost parodying it and parod- parodying it. Sorry, that's hard to say. But trying to, but yeah, you're kind of like doing it in a, oh, am I like doing this correctly? I don't know. You kind of make fun of it first to figure out what parts of it work, and then you say, oh, now I can like sincerely write this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you just dropped a lot that I want to mine
Sorry,
through.
that was a whole lot.
No, it's good. It's good. I've got thoughts and questions. Um, Quick side note before diving into that, just again for the audience here, the challenges that Aaron was talking about in the course. So the way the course is set up, there are 6 song challenges, and people get paired up for the different collaborations throughout the course. But this cohort of human beings is filled with overachievers, and they all kept setting like these separate personal side goals for themselves. And to hear that you like specifically were setting um, genre goals for yourself is really really interesting, because I specifically want to come back to one of the songs from class that I know was on the tougher side for you. You're like, I know which one. Okay.
I'm pretty sure I know which one this is.
But before we do that, I just want to bring up a couple points here. So first and foremost, the fact that you, as a young person, were listening to these different types of music and going through the process of analyzing what makes this style sound like this. I don't think most people do that. I could be wrong here, but I don't think that that's something that most people are naturally thinking about. I'm curious, was there something prompt you to do that, or was it just your ear being curious?
Yeah, so Rick, my like quick thing for this, my introduction to like learning to read music and play music, I was completely self-taught. Um, so
Did not
and
know that. Okay.
yeah, so my older sister got a recorder when she was in like third grade or something like that, and I was just like, I want one of these. I want to play music. So my parents gave me a recorder, um, but but like it had just like a fingering chart in it. And my older sister took piano lessons, and so she was the one who like really like was learning music and learning how to read music in that. And I did not do that. Instead, I had to like I looked at like I remember looking at this fingering chart for the recorder and saying, "Oh, okay, so this note has a name. Okay, cool. And this note has a name, and this note name means this." And like learning all of these fingerings, and then being able to look at a like beginner piano book and say, "Okay, now cool, I can play this because I know what fingerings for all of these different uh, notes there are," and then learned how to read music that way. Um, so then, and I was like in like first grade teaching myself this. It was super weird.
No, that's
Um,
freaking awesome, is what that is. And so cool. I don't think I know anyone else who has started from an experience like that, where they started on an instrument other than piano to read music and then go eventually to piano. And I don't know when you start to play piano,
yeah.
but that's, oh, tell me more.
Well, so then, and yeah, so then learning the piano became very similar. And I still do not call myself a pianist because I know so many people who are far better than me. I can play the piano. I also was someone who,
Well, if you can play the piano,
but
aren't you a pianist? But
I know, it's imposter syndrome. It's a whole thing.
yeah.
But but yeah, no. So I then went and took that, and I was like, okay, cool. I can play music like this. But then I was like, okay, cool. I don't have the sheet music for a song. Let me try to figure out how to play this song. And so I then reverse engineered everything and learned
Yes.
how to transcribe music. And then from learning how to transcribe music, I was like, oh, so I can make this up on my own. And then would make up and start writing music. I was probably in like third-ish grade, third or fourth grade when I started writing music. Um, I just like went on Microsoft Word and created staffs for myself so that I had my own staff paper and would write music that way then. And then I finally got into band, was playing the trumpet, eventually switched to the tuba, um, was in like choir and show choir and all these different things. And then I majored in music for my freshman year of college. And it was, um, I also played the piano. We had to take keyboarding class as you do in college. And my professor was like, "Do you just want to take piano lessons?" And I unfortunately didn't have time. It's one of my biggest regrets in life was in college when like my keyboarding teacher was like, "Hey, you're better than everyone in class. Do you just want to like pick up a major in this or like a minor in playing the piano? Because like we could do that. We could design this for you." And I didn't.
Hey,
Um,
it's never too late.
I know. But so yeah, that is kind of where I learned music. And then from learning music that way, then I that's how I learned how to like dissect music was from an early age being like, okay, cool, this is how I take apart these things. Now, if I want to write something in this style, like this does like this and this rhythm is kind of like this. So then and it was yeah, all of these things that you like kind of do when you are get to college and that or like in high school when you're taking like music theory.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I was kind of teaching myself at a young age. So then by the time I got to that, I was able to like kind of dig deeper than like my peers were because it was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, I already know this, but like, what is making me feel this emotionally here in this piece? Or like, what is this chord? Why is this chord leading to this and like have this effect on?
This makes so much sense, Aaron. So much sense. Just knowing you. I mean, the fact that so you've been an outside in musician from the very beginning, which is first of all so freaking cool. Because I don't know a lot of people who like fully experienced all of learning to play an instrument, of learning to read music, of learning to dissect music in that way. But also, like, I'm fascinated by this because I am the exact opposite. Like, I started the Yamaha program, so I was starting with
Mhm.
like light instrumentation, learning counting and reading sheet music first, and translating that to the piano. Piano was my first instrument, and kind of like had to learn what you were doing as a kid as I went along, especially when I was like in my teenage years, and then even more so into college and beyond. But it's fascinating to hear a story that is the reverse of everything I know and experienced. Wow. I wonder how many other people are out there who have truly gone through that type of music learning experience.
But I think it's an important thing to bring up there is that like it just goes to show that there's no one way to learn these things. There's no
Right.
one way to learn how to write or to learn how to be a good writer. Um, and you can approach these things from so many different angles and get so many cool perspectives that way. Because I know like there are things even during like the cohort, there were things that you would bring up that I'm like, huh, I didn't think about that way.
Hmm.
That's cool. I should probably reconsider the way that I'm addressing. And even actually the song that you did with Kate, um,
Oh,
uh,
the pop punk
the
Hamlet song.
the pop, yeah, 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 was one that I was like, huh, I didn't think about writing pop punk a couple of these ways. Like you did a couple of things in there that I was like, huh, I didn't think about this. I would benefit from learning to do that. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
Ha. Yeah, you see, this is why I just freaking love community and listening to people talk about their process and what they're doing, hear their thoughts on things, because there's always something or a million things that you're not thinking.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Man, I just want to I want to know what your brain does. I want to know what your brain hears. So I'm not gonna stalk you or dissect your brain or anything, but if you could just constantly tell me what you're thinking, that'd be great. Thank you.
Very cool.
I also want to jump back to something else that you had talked about in your initial spiel there. Um, you said that you were listening to movie scores as a
Yeah.
kid. I'm curious, did you gravitate toward any specific scores or genres? Because I didn't do a lot of that as a kid, but I do remember I listened to the Lord of the Rings soundtrack a
Oh yeah.
lot as a kid. But other than that, I never really did that. So did you gravitate
Oh,
towards something?
oh yeah. No, Howard Shore was a huge one, and obviously John Williams. I feel like your two main answers, like for composers, if you're a musical theater composer, you listen to Sondheim. If you're a film composer, you listen to John Williams. Like those are kind of your staples. Um, but yeah, no, and even when I was watching movies, though, I would pay more attention to the soundtrack often and what the
Mm,
soundtrack was doing. As a kid, I did kind of gravitate towards a lot of those big orchestral things, though. Like Howard Shore, I listened to all three of those Lord of the Rings albums on repeat.
so
All of the
good.
Harry Potters, I listened to all of those soundtracks. Um, oh, what other ones did I have? I can't remember. Oh, Danny Elfman as well was a huge
Oh,
one.
but of
Listened to a
course.
lot of Danny Elfman. Um, Everything from Spider-Man to Sleepy Hollow. It was a lot of scores like that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Also, that makes a lot of sense. Just knowing your music and
Mm-hmm.
what you like in music,
Yeah.
these influences from childhood, they they fall in line.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Um, I feel like there's another thing that you had said in your initial. Oh, yeah, about the experience of crossing genres over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, was that just a thought you had? Like, what if? Or did it come from the limitation side of what you knew and what you played versus what you wanted to then know and be playing as well?
Um, I I think a lot of it was kind of those combinations of genres was being able to pick that out in other things that I was hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, cool, other people are doing this. And it wasn't necessarily always the genres that then I would start crossing, but hearing, so going back to Phantom of the Opera, hearing something that was very much inspired, something that was inspired by more classic horror, and a soundtrack wise, with and this cathedral kind of organ, but then with 80s rock,
Yeah.
which I didn't have a vocabulary for at the time when I was obviously I didn't know what 80s rock was.
Right.
But being able to say, oh, these things Mike would go to church and listen to church music, and it's okay, cool. So I can hear how this is influenced by that.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
have this, but then I have this rock stuff on top of that with these guitars. And then kind of listen to movie soundtracks where they were also mixing styles. It then became oh, okay, so I can mix styles like that too. So I could take, um, another person that I have to kind of credit with this is Christina Aguilera with the Back to Basics album, which was a lot of pop music combined
Yeah.
with the dreaded jazz and swing. Um,
We'll get there in a second.
yeah, but was another place where it's like, okay, cool. You can take these different styles of music and you can like cross them and like take this aspect from one and this aspect from another. Like this drum beat, this the way that like this is orchestrated, and then like add this style of singing on top of it,
Yeah.
and create something super cool.
Interesting. Yeah. That's cool that you picked up on that as a kid. I don't know that that really occurred to me until much, much later on that that's really what was happening. But I love hearing that perspective. You make a good point about Christina Aguilera too. Like, there's so much now where I'm looking back on music that I heard as a kid. I'm like, oh, if only I had known then what I know now, or had
Yeah.
been able to dissect it in the way that I can. You know?
Or again, like Simple Plan, with like having all of this like pop punk music, but then having Untitled on the end of that album that was a piano ballad with like these like strings over top of it. It was like, oh, okay, so you could take this like pop punk sound and like the way that someone sings this, and also add these orchestral elements to it. With like a music video also that like just was visually stunning and like matched every part of that, which was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I do want to talk a little bit about your process in how you approach writing styles outside your comfort zone. And I thought
Yeah.
maybe it would be fun to use the framing device of the jazz song from the cohort.
Yeah.
So which song challenge was this?
This was character establishment, and
Yield character establishment.
yeah, and I remember looking at the list of options of like books that we were given to like write an establishing song for a character, um, and me being drawn to a couple of them, and my writing partner really being drawn to one of them, and it
Which
was like,
was
okay,
Gatsby.
which was Gatsby, yes. Um, and I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. This is fine. We had a conversation about it. We are like, okay, cool. What are kind of like the style ideas? Where are we going character wise? How do we make this happen? And it was like, okay, cool. And Jordan started writing some really, really cool lyrics with it. Some really fun lyrics to
Shout
write.
out to Jordan Gambulski.
Yes, just wonderful, wonderful lyrics. Um, and like getting lyrics like that is always I enjoy, is it's like a gift. You're being given something that's like nice and fun to write to, and it's just like, oh, okay, cool, now I get to just play around.
Yeah.
But knowing that this had to be a jazz number because we were writing something for Gatsby, it was a terrifying, because jazz is very much a style that I'm not ever comfortable in. I don't think, no matter, and I've written jazz things before. That wasn't my first time writing anything that was jazz. But it's always something that I feel like a fraud doing.
Interesting.
So it was something that was like that extra like challenge for myself to be like, okay, well, now you have to make that happen. Um, but yeah, a lot of it was finding a way in to jazz and into that kind of style. We had said, okay, cool, we want to set this at a party, this song at a party. So it was this character of Nick being like, okay, cool, I'm now seeing all this and watching this stuff at like a crazy party, because Nick wouldn't be someone who like sang this big, huge, like jazzy number, but we were imagining this like at the top of the show. So it was like, it needs to be something that will impress and be fun.
Right. So we're talking big 20s inspired, like early styles of jazz music.
Yes. And this is my like little cheat thing that I did.
Yes.
It's not early 20s. There were a couple of elements in there that were like, okay, cool, this is going to take some of the elements of early 20s. But one of the things that I think we as a society do is that we remember things incorrectly.
Mandela effect, anyone?
Yeah. And so we remember jazz music in the 1920s, or like people's like idea of what like the 1920s jazz sounds like does not come often from early jazz music. Um, so much of it comes from like swing,
Yeah.
and like the 30s and 40s, and it's like, nope, this is not technically from the 20s. So that
Right.
was the first kind of like cheat thing that I did there was took some things that were from the collective consciousness's remembrance of the 20s as opposed to strictly actual 20s.
Which is, I'm going to throw out there, A, valid, and B, smart.
Yeah.
Because if that is how our collective consciousness thinks about 20s music, then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
why not?
Absolutely. But then the other thing that I did, so me personally, I'm very comfortable writing pop rock and pop punk music. That is like where I comfortably sit.
And
It,
you're hella good at it, so.
well, thank you. It is just what makes sense to me in terms of musical theater writing. I've spent a lot of time doing it. New Dawn is a lot of that. So then the other thing that I did was approach writing that song like I was writing a pop punk song,
Mm-hmm.
but under the lens of if I was writing a pop punk song that Postmodern Jukebox was writing.
Yes.
And so it was this weird roundabout way of saying, okay, I'm going to not specifically try to write jazz music, but how would I write jazz music how Scott Bradley would write jazz music or like an arrangement of a current pop rock song.
Interesting.
And
Because
so it was,
that opens a whole world of flexibility. That is very smart. Please continue.
oh yeah, no. So like that was the kind of the entire way that I went about that was because it's a genre that I'm not comfortable in, it is saying, well, what is a genre that I am comfortable in? And what are examples of them taking that genre and turning it into the genre that I need to be?
Yeah.
So then it was I wasn't writing the song specifically as a pop rock song. Obviously, I didn't go through like writing this like it was like some 41, but I was kind of like using that route in um, and trying to think of which ones were really helpful. There, they do a version of Hit 'em Up Style that was super helpful.
Okay.
Because it was taking that and like layering on a lot of like very 1920s sounds, which super cool. If you haven't listened to it,
I've not
awesome.
listened to that one, no.
It is an awesome rendition of that song. And like listening to it, I'm sure you would be like, oh, I can hear how you did this now, Aaron. That's my trick with you, my magic trick with you. Yeah.
That's very cool. I do also want to throw out there though that like you do have to have a basic understanding of the genre that you're writing in, even in order to find that way in. And I think it's a very cool way in that you found, but I just want to make sure that you're not selling yourself short, that you don't know things about writing jazz, because you do. Like, I
Yeah.
saw the music that you presented to us. And that was also a rewrite aside song count as well. So I got to see both versions and like what you were doing in terms of the chord structures, the way they fall in the hands, the jumping left hand, the swing, the types of chords, of what the progression sounded like. You have a clear understanding of what jazz music sounds like. So
Yeah.
don't sell
It,
yourself short on that side.
yeah, I will not say it's not that I am not it's not that I do not have knowledge about jazz music. But it is something that is a this is not my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
which I think happens with everyone. I mean, you're singers specifically, like it's a lot of like, okay, cool. Like I sing classical music, but I have to sing this like pop song. What are the ways that I can like? What are the sounds in classical music that like I can translate? Or like this is how I do a melismatic run. Now then, can I turn that into a riff and that idea? And so it's like taking
Yeah.
the skills that you know, knowing that this is how it relates to another style, and then
Yeah.
kind of
Absolutely.
like,
And like as a vocal coach, that resonates highly with me. That idea of really
yeah,
helping people take what they already do and know well, and then translate that into the next thing. Um,
yeah,
yeah, finding that way in. Yeah, because now I'm thinking about so King's Legacy, my Anne Boleyn musical
mm,
has some English Renaissance inspired music in it.
yeah,
As you were saying that, I was thinking back through. I was like, what? Because I wrote a madrigal for that piece. It's a 3 part Thomas Morley style madrigal,
mhm,
and like I know it's not 100% accurate as a madrigal, but
yeah,
does anyone in the audience care? No. Um, but I wanted to evoke time and place, but also it's serving a plot function as well. And I don't even remember what my way in was. Maybe it was just listening to a lot of Morley. Maybe that's what
mhm,
inspired me to write the thing. But it's a great point that like having your knowledge base from what you do well, knowing these other things, and then finding what is your trigger point to make that happen for yourself, that style, that thing that's outside your comfort zone is probably the way that most people do it.
yeah. I mean, like during that entire course, on all of those songs, that was literally my way of approaching every song was finding music that I was like, okay, cool, this is in the style of what I'm wanting to do. The last song that I did with Amy Andrews
Shout out to
was
Amy.
shout out to Amy, who's again giving just this wonderful gift of these like very fun, like funny lyrics,
Yeah.
and trying to write an 80s rock song out of that. Um,
It was a comedy song for those of you who don't know.
oh, yes. So writing like an 80s rock song, I was then just sitting there for like 2 weeks listening to 80s rock. And it also helped that I was music directing Mamma Mia at the time. So I was already
True.
living in like a very period kind of mindset. But listening to a lot of 80s rock specifically, I listened to a lot of Journey, obviously, as
Yes.
kind of that music ended up delineating. But was the one that I wrote with Kate, the groundhog song. Um,
Which is
I
delightful.
listened to a lot of like 70s disco. And so it was like these are things that I don't necessarily like sit comfortably in, but like let me sit there and kind of like get this sound in my ear and like listen to multiple like examples of kind of the style that you're wanting to do and finding the things that are similar between all of them and saying, okay, cool. So this is how I make something that sounds like this style, even if the rest of it isn't actually that style, as long as you have those checkpoints in there,
Yes.
you can really mess
Yes.
around with style within that as much as you want to. So, like you were saying with King's Legacy, you have a couple of checkpoints for like a madrigal in there, and it's like, okay, cool. If I've ticked these boxes off, then I can do whatever else I want to with it to make it serve the purpose that I need it.
Right, because we're not trying to recreate the actual thing. We're trying to bring the
Mhm.
flavors to the purpose of what is we're trying to write.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and you were so successful with the 70s disco, with the 80s rock ballad about bread, um, but also you wrote a piratey sounding charm song as well, which came out great. Like you can so I'm gonna say easily because from where I'm standing, it does seem easy. I know it's not easy process wise, but you can so
Yeah.
easily just slot yourself into these different types of styles and do them in a way that sounds just so successful first and foremost, but also totally hits on the goal that you had for the piece, which that's the key thing. And I find that personally very difficult to do when writing outside of my comfort zone. Is like make sure that I don't get wrapped up in the side of like, I feel like a fraud, and then missing the mark completely on what it is I'm trying to do.
Yeah. No, that's very fair. I think that is a whole lot of practice, but also just a lot of it too is a lot of just I have a lot of people who will ask like, "What's your favorite style of music?" And I have a really hard time answering the question,
Mm-hmm.
because I think an important thing is just listening to all genres of music. Because you think about it, even in like a genre of music, there's going to be songs that you don't like. So it's hard to say that this is the genre that I like the most because there's still songs that you don't like, and there are going to be songs in another genre that you really do like.
Yeah.
Kind of like having a wide net of music to listen to, I think really does benefit, and finding things that speak to you in all of these different genres really does benefit.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know, like another, not to give another weird example, but when I was in high school, there was I was in the All-State Honors Choir in Illinois
Heck
back
yeah.
in like 2007. If anyone was there, hi. Um, so so the the women's choir song that they were supposed to be singing was what it was called. Yeah. Anyway,
Uh-huh.
they sang this rendition of Homeland. Um,
Okay.
this song is like Homeland, the country, da 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 da
Oh
da
yeah,
da,
yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
it is from Holst's The Planets.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was cool listening to that and saying, oh, here is a cool choral rendition of the song that could so easily become a pop song as well, the way that this entire thing was structured. If the entire thing comes from Holst, comes from like Holst's The Planets.
Yeah.
And I spent a long time in college on The Planets, and kind of like listening to how those things, how like that music kind of like successfully depicts all of these different kind of like ideas and styles. Um, we played in like tuba euphonium ensemble played Mars, and so
Of
obviously that one
course.
is
Classic.
very, yeah, is like very reminiscent of the Imperial March, and it is, you hear
Yeah.
how that inspires that. Um, and so this one entire suite of music could go so many different directions,
Yeah.
and you can play with style that way. And so I think I was fortunate in being exposed to music like that, and exposed to how you can shift and change musical styles
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the same base material.
Yeah. These are excellent, excellent points. Huh. These are wonderful nuggets of wisdom, my friend. I mean, especially the idea of just immersing yourself in things that are of the style you're trying to write, or remind us collectively of a style that you're trying to write in. That, and
Mm-hmm.
then even bringing up the idea of the planet's suite, and which is fully threaded together. It doesn't sound like it is disjointed in any way, shape, or form, but it does uh, lend itself to becoming something else within each of the planets. That's very cool. I hope our audience took away some good thoughts there.
And another like fun, like an exercise for me that I do that like honestly has gotten me work before. I've had multiple jobs writing scoring for, like, one was for like kind of a spoof commercial for like a Quidditch movie that I had some
Yes.
friends doing, and then another one was again writing like a Harry Potter inspired like John Williams um, suite that a friend needed for another web series,
That's cool.
and so it became like, okay, cool. How do I write something that sounds like this without being this? And
Right.
how do I? And so like mimicking a style, and like kind of the idea of fake it till you make it, but the
Yeah.
thing is, if you can fake it, quote unquote, you're technically doing it. And
True.
so
Yeah.
you just have to say, like, oh, I'm not actually faking this. I'm actually just writing something that is inspired by this. And then by doing that, you learn the ins and outs very
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah, it's like what you said before about parody as a way in as well,
Mm-hmm.
or feeling like you're parodying until you're not. Which,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's another great piece of wisdom. You see, I knew you'd be the right person to have a convo like this with. This is great. But I do see what time it is, and so we
Oh,
should
yeah.
probably do our wrap up questions here.
Oh yeah,
Are you ready?
sure.
Okay. These are, I think, shorter answer questions
So I will
than
I
you
will
think.
stay short. Sorry.
All right. There are three of them. Here's the first one.
Yeah.
What's your favorite non-musical theater writing activity?
Um, I ooh, honestly, I've gotten into playing The Sims from the pandemic. Um, The Sims is kind of fun. It's another form of creation and like kind of creating people's lives.
Yeah.
So, which is just fun.
Yeah. It's like you're still writing, but doing it in a completely
Yeah.
different format. That's
Also,
cool.
I'll say D&D obviously, but like shout out to Michael Ratty. Um,
Get out of here. For those of you who would
yeah,
like to know, I do
yeah,
have a campaign that Aaron plays in,
yeah.
um, which is delightful. One of my favorite activities for sure. Which is also just storytelling.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
again it's more.
improv and scripted stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
We're starting a D&D podcast. We'll get there.
we'll get there.
Yeah. Okay, next one. Is there a story, a Bruin, you have not begun to write, but that you think you need to?
Um, so I have one that I have been trying to find a way into for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That I like try not to share with too many people. But it is
You
it
don't
is
have to
one
say
that I
what it
think
is.
is. Oh yeah, no. But yeah, no, it is one that I think is a lot of fun. That is has the potential. Honestly, has the potential to do a lot of what I was just saying because it involves. I've had to sit down and listen to a lot of like specifically a lot of cathedral music and uh, a lot
Intriguing.
of organ. I think we've talked about this before.
I think we have.
But yeah, and so listening to a lot of like I learned some Latin to work on this. So then I learned how to like translate some things in Latin, so then I could have like Latin chanting and like music that I can layer on top of other styles of music.
Like it. I like it.
Yeah,
I want it. The world wants it.
that's
The world
being
needs it.
sorry for being so vague, but yes, it's a yes. Oh,
Excellent. Oh, did you have something else?
oh no, 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 that was it. I was just laughing. Yeah.
Last question, and this comes from my brother-in-law. So shout out to Brendan Klitsch. Thank you for this wonderful question. What's something that you love or are proud of that you don't get to talk about often?
Ooh,
Right? It's a
um,
good question.
yeah, that's a difficult question. Something that I so something that I love that I don't get to talk about often,
Love or are proud of.
or proud of.
Kind of open the door for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I thing is, I talk a lot, and I will talk a whole lot about things that I love, or that I would say things that I'm proud of. I'm someone who does not talk a whole lot about honestly about festivals and about putting shows up in festivals and kind of like what that takes.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that the process of doing a festival and kind of like the I'm proud of the fact that I've like been able to do so many of them,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like kind of have found my way through that circuit so many times,
Yeah.
which is
Impressive.
an exhausting feat to do.
Yeah.
Um, if anyone has done it, you know exactly what, and like you've done it. They are a lot of work, but it's also a niche topic that like most people don't really want to hear about
However,
because like
I think they
uh,
do. I'm sitting here thinking like
yeah.
I'm gonna have to have you back to talk about festivals because
No,
I think the audience is going to be very interested in that topic specifically.
yeah, it's in my personal life, there's not a lot of people who have wanted to have conversations about like festivals and that topic. We'll say.
Okay.
So that's why I don't talk about it. I don't talk about that as much.
And it was also a very sly way to get yourself back on the interview.
Also,
series, so.
I'm trying to come back here, so.
And I will be very happy to have you back. And then just a bonus question. Where can people find you, follow you, interact with you on the interwebs?
Honestly, the best way to find me or contact me or follow me is Instagram. That's the one I use the most. And my Instagram is at Aaron M. Krueger. It's AARON MKRUEGER. As in like the horror movie villain Krueger.
Yeah. And I'll put that Instagram handle in the description of the video as well. So
yeah.
People can follow you. Find it anywhere else, or is that the main place?
That's the main place. I have a TikTok that I don't really use. I have a Facebook that I don't really use. Instagram is the one that I really use. I'm off Twitter, so yeah.
I technically have a Twitter handle either.
Oh yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you, A, taking the time, but B, also taking the risk of being the first interviewed guest on the series. And it was a wonderful conversation. I so appreciate you and all of your thoughts.
Oh, thank you, of course. And I thank you for having me. I'm honored that I got to do it. And so, honestly, so thank you.
Well, no. Yeah, I mean, you just seem to like the right ask, so thank you for being here. And thank you to all of you for watching today's first episode. Will there be more? Yes, I hope so. This was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. And for those of you watching, if you did enjoy this content, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you're not subscribed. But otherwise, you know where to find me. All the stuff's in the description below. And Aaron's handle will be in the description below. And we'll do more of these soon. So, thank you all. Cheers, everyone, and till next time. Bye.
Thank you all for being here with me today, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.